My name is Filip Knezovic. I work for the launch team at Red Hat, and I'm a specialist solution architect here today to speak to you about Red Hat Developer Hub. Today I'll be doing a demo on how to quickly create a golden template and then adopting that golden template to your application, which typically starts in a skeleton form, gets populated with variables coming from the template, and then pushed into GitHub. I've decided to add an extra step in here to show it in a very quick, easy to use CI/CD process, which uses Git actions to push your code directly into production. So lots of fun today. Hopefully you enjoy the video. Let's go through the workflow just quickly. As you can see, we'll start off from Developer Hub, and the first thing we'll do is we'll actually build our golden template, catalog item, depending on what you want to call it. And then from there, as I said, if you have an existing application, we'll create a skeleton template of that application. And you'll see in here, we're adopting a whole bunch of different items into that skeleton template. We'll be using TechDocs, which is Developer Hub's way of you guys solving some of the pains you may have with documentation. We'll push things via TechDocs. As well as this, we'll give you enablement so that you can open the application using dev spaces, or if you want to use Git dev. We'll be putting developer links in here. We're aware that developers typically have, 10, 15, sometimes even 20 links open just for tooling they need around their development stack, whether it's pipelines, CI/CD, monitoring, it could be project tools like Jira, or it could be a whole bunch of items that they have open. So we're going to try and show you how to streamline that using developer links. And because we're pushing this directly into OpenShift, I've got my own OpenShift resources pushed into the skeleton. From here, it just gets moved over to a workflow for developers to create the new application. From there, we'll push it into GitHub. And then GitHub actually has an event listener in Git Actions that will actually listen to any changes to the code that you've made, push it into Red Hat Key or Quay, depending on where you're from. And then from Red Hat Quay, we push it into OpenShift. So with this in mind, let's start with the catalog first. So the catalog itself typically gets created underneath the create option here, and you'll see that we have a bunch of templates. These are the default ones that came out of the box for me when I installed Backstage of Developer Hub. You'll see here that I have a bunch of service-based templates. Let's today go ahead and create a new one. I have a folder here of many templates for many different programming languages. For today, we're going to focus on Node.js, and we're going to build a Node.js template. And I want to make a point here that you'll see that I have a Git repo for my templates, and then I have another Git repo for my skeleton. Now, the skeleton is not actually your final deployed application. It's a snapshot of your application with placeholders in there that require injected variables to be put in there. So typically you can probably keep both of these in one Git repo. I've seen examples where there's one repo and there's one folder for skeletons and there's one folder for templates. You can do that. I've decided to keep these separate because I believe the roles for authoring the templates are typically for people who are responsible for what a starting point for an application should look like. So from a development side, it could be an app architect, it could be an architect, an enterprise architect, it could be a dev lead, or it could be a developer with heightened privileges. And typically the starting point may be an application that may have certain prerequisites that your company directs you to follow. It could be certain code libraries that you must use. You might have a center of excellence, or you may have done some analysis on certain code libraries from a linting or from a code scanning quality perspective, so say via SonarQube. There are a bunch of reasons why you may have starting libraries or references or assemblies that you want your application to have. And those are not necessarily just defined by developers. That could be defined by infrastructure, it could be defined by platform engineers or architects as well as developers. So that role there is a little different. Now, as I said to you, your skeleton is not your final application, but I do believe that developers should have input into this. And I've said to you before, your starting point is very arbitrary on what you want. It could be a simple application that just has certain code libraries that they want to use, or it could be a lot maturer. Say you're in a microservices world and you want a version or snapshot, your coding templates at certain points and say, this is great, we want to start from here. So you could actually provide a template to your development teams, at a certain point in time based on what you want your starting point to be. So it's great for new developers if you want to ramp them up and accelerate their onboarding very quickly because everything is pre-built. They don't need to do that. It's great from controlling, cowboy programmers from just using libraries of their own preference, or if they don't know what they're using, or even from a versioning perspective. All of these are all very useful use cases of when to actually use a template. So I've decided to keep the authoring of the templates different. As I said today, we're using a Node.js template, and well, I guess we'll just go into this very quickly. Sorry, I'm flicking around here a bit. Let's open up code, and we'll actually let's open up the RHGH template. So you'll see here that I've already cloned this locally here, and we'll look at the Node.js template starting from the top and going down. So the API version, so this structure that you're seeing in here is completely customizable inside of Backstage. You can follow from Backstage IO, you can follow the schema in there. The type of object that we're building today is going to be a template. Metadata-wise, I've just given it a very generic name, my organization -devhub, and it's a Node.js template. And then a title, first Node.js app. This will actually appear in Developer Hub, so we can call it something different. So I'm just going to use for an organization today, we're just going to be calling it Acme. So that way you'll see any distinctive changes applying to an organization will be applied to the organization of Acme, and it's a Node.js app. This description here is actually what will be displayed inside of Developer Hub. So you may want this to be a message for new developers. Use this template, Acme Devs, as a scaffolded Node. I'll just give myself a bit more room here. Scaffold Node.js app. It will okay, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory that it will register in a Developer Hub, right? So this is what they'll see as a developer going in. Now the tags I'm going to throw in here, this is typically for searching purposes. I'm just going to throw in Node.js and demo. You can add more tags in here. And the spec type is of type service. We'll be building a Node.js app with API endpoints. There's a list of different spec types. I believe website is another one that you can throw in there. So just again, look at the schema spec inside Backstage IO to see what are available spec types. Now these parameters here are parameters that we're going to give the developers in order for them to fill out how they want to run this application. Again, depending on how you author and what you want the developers to be able to do, you would redefine this. For my project today, I have a bunch of parameters that I want them to fill out. The first is to give it a repository name of their choice. So in my workflow, I'm allowing the developers to define their repository name. If they don't pick one, the repo name is just going to be demo Node.js app. And this is going to be the repo repository name that we'll be pushing to. So we'll be pushing to this location right here. The port itself, Node.js app, I'm just going to run it on port 3000. I'm not going to run it on port 8080 or port 80, as so many applications default to that. We're just going to default to 3000. I want a description of the application. By default, if you don't fill this out, it's just going to call it a scaffolder app. So we'll allow them to put a description of their application in there. And then the owner. Now, I've put this in here more for demonstrative purposes. You probably wouldn't use a value like this. But we want the owner of the actual catalog item must exist as an entity in Developer Hub for certain RBAC and access reasons. For today, we're just going to use guest. This is probably not something that you would give to developers, but I've put it in there today as I want to show you things inside of Developer Hub. And then finally, the OpenShift namespace. Because we're creating an OpenShift cluster and we're actually deploying this into OpenShift, that project name by default is going to be this. Again, it's arbitrary for them to do this. Now the steps themselves, you'll see here, got a bit of space envy. I'm just going to tab these up. I have a bunch of different steps. So the three main steps that you're going to see that I'm going to ask my catalog to today is I want it to fetch a template from GitHub, and that template is that skeleton file that we've been talking about. It'll be coming from this URL, right? So this is the point that I'll actually be getting it from. And into this template, I'm going to be injecting these values: the repository name, the owner, the description, the port number, and the namespace for OpenShift. Now I'm going to show you this in a moment in the skeleton where these will actually apply. After I fetch the template from the skeleton from Git, I'm going to publish it to GitHub with injected values. So I get my skeleton. As a developer, I pre-populate these fields. These fields then inject themselves into my skeleton, and then we create the final rendered application. In this case, I'm going to publish that back to GitHub. This is an actual dynamic plugin that we have in Backstage that you need to install in order to do this. I'll reference that as a separate video if you're interested, or you can contact me if you're interested to understand how that works. And in this case, I'll be pushing it to my repo, my organizational repo, which is na-launch, under the repo name that I've chosen. And then again, the description is the description. I'll be pushing it to a private Git repo. I like to keep this private because I have certain usernames and passwords that I don't want the public to see for now. Finally, then, once I've done those two tasks, I want this to be visible as a catalog item inside of Developer Hub. So the final step will just be to register it into Developer Hub. So you'll see in here that I have catalog info as my info path. I'll go into that a bit later on. I want to be outputting links, and I want to be two links that you'll see. One is to open it in the catalog, and one is to open the repository. You'll actually see those coming up. So I'm going to save this. We're going to be calling ourselves Acme. I save this, and then I'm just going to push it in there. Made changes to the description. Okay, so I'm just going to push this in. Okay, so that's now in GitHub. Let's just verify that it actually truly is in GitHub. We should see this change in here, and you'll see that our template is now ready to go. Now, pulling this into Developer Hub is not a difficult task. As you can see in here, there are 4 that were produced out of the box. All we need to do is click on this register existing component, and it's going to ask for a URL. Now, typically, when it looks for a URL, we need it to actually point to this file directly. So I would just click on this file in here, and you'll see that it's looking for this YAML file, the one that we were just working on. So I'm just going to copy this link here. I'm going to add it in here. I'm going to click Analyze, and you'll see in here that it's detected 2 entities inside of the template, and it's going to actually allow me to add these to the catalog. Right, so the template itself is ready to go. It's given me a generated UID, so I'll just click on Import, and you'll see that it's been added. So now, if I actually go to my Create, you'll see that our new Acme service is now there. Okay, so those 3 steps have been added in there. Now, before I get into the next phase here, which is building the template and the skeleton, as I said to you before, the skeleton is predefined. It looks like your final productionized application, or your produced application, I should say, but it's got a whole bunch of placeholder variables in here that we're going to push in. So I think I need to show you this first before we actually generate the actual catalog. So let's just say, for example, I've got a Node.js app in here. And if I actually had my time back, I would move these 3 files, Dockerfile, package.json, and server.js, into maybe an app folder, because those are the only 3 files that my application needs. The rest of these are all just part of a Developer Hub. So let's just look at the Node.js app very quickly. You'll see in here I have server.js, and it's an extremely simple Node.js app. It's running Express.js. All we're doing is, from the root, we're just going to send back some text that just gives a greeting here. And it runs on port 3000, which is based on the environment variable. Okay, so nothing complicated in server.js. The package JSON, because this is just in skeleton mode, has this tag in here called values.parameter name. So in this case, there's values.repo name, and there's values.description. These were the values that I was referring to inside your catalog. When you define these parameters in here, when the developer actually fills these out. In fact, let me show that to you right now. Okay. So these were the parameters that we defined when we built this catalog item. So there's a description here, there's a repo name, there's a port number, the owner, and the namespace. So as soon as the developer fills this out, when they're petitioning for a new application, they would put these values in here. Inside my actual skeleton, we will actually replace values.description will actually be replaced with the description of the application. So whatever we put in here will actually be injected straight into here. Now this string formatting that you're seeing here adopts itself to anything inside this Git repo. So Developer Hub will scan through file by file. It'll look for this and it'll actually substitute what it needs for there. So to put that into an example, I've created a dev file in here because I also may want to use this in dev spaces. And in here, you'll see I have these same values pushed in there as well. If I go to my K8s, my Kubernetes resources, you'll see that I've got the values.repo name and the namespace because in my Kubernetes objects, I want to use that namespace that was defined by the developer in here. Okay, so your skeleton basically, it looks like your final copy, but it has all these pre-loaded injected placeholders that you'll push in here. The other thing that I have in here is, as I said, I have a dev file which I've created and added in there. I also have an mkdocs.yaml and a docs folder. So when building my documentation, we follow the same standard as GitHub. We use MD files, markdown files, and it's the same syntax when you build your documents. There is quite a bit of work involved in producing the documents at runtime, so I won't be covering that for today. But just for your reference point, you want to create this mkdocs.yaml file, and then you want a docs folder where most of your documents will sit, and it typically starts off with the index.md, and you can see in here it's in the pre-populated mode. So I've added that in there, and then finally I should add. So the dev file has created here, but I've also created a dev container file because I want to edit this in GitHub Dev. I want to have the option of doing it in dev spaces or GitHub Dev. So I've added a dev container.json file so that this can be edited in GitHub Dev as well. I do have this .github folder, and under here I have my workflows, and you'll see in here I have my GitHub Actions file. I'll go through this in more detail later, but again, you'll see that we have this values.x in here, values.parameter name variable in here. I have added extra wrapping around this because I don't want Developer Hub to render these values here. These secrets here, secrets.image registry, user and password, are actually stored inside of GitHub. It's using the GitHub secrets vault, not the Developer Hub one. If I was running this internally, I would probably just use a config map or secrets inside of OpenShift. But because I'm actually creating an outputted repository, I just didn't want to inject these values directly into code for anyone to see, even though the repository is a private repo. I don't even want my developers to see this. So the secrets are actually being stored in GitHub. I keep these separate, but I have to put this extra wrapping here because it is a string literal. I want GitHub to render these values, not Developer Hub. So I've put extra wrapping around that. Whereas for these here, because I want it to be rendered in Developer Hub, I've kept it like that. So I believe I've covered most of the template items. The final thing in the template that it will look for is this catalog info. If you don't have this, then it's going to look very bare inside of a developer hub. But this basically decides what the catalog info will look like inside of developer hub. So in this case here, you'll see that I've got some annotations. I've got a GitHub reference here, which will look for my repo name. I've got my Backstage tech docs annotation here so that we can actually create a link to our documents. And then I've just put 2 links in here for now. You can put as many links in here as you like. It has 3 attributes for the links. It needs a URL, obviously, because it's a link. It needs a title, and then it needs an icon. You can choose these. Again, these specs are in backstage.io. For today, I've just created a link for dev spaces and another link for GitHub. So that's basically what my skeleton looks like. So going to my workflow here, you've seen the catalog and you've seen the skeleton, and you've seen the things inside my skeleton on top of my application that I've included in there. So looking at my template here, I'm a developer. I want to request a snapshot of this skeleton. Okay, so the first thing is I need a repo name. I'm actually going to use, I've already pre-built it here, version 101, which is typically a numbering I use for learning. So node demo-node.js-app-v101. I want it to run on port 3000. I'm going to give a description and say scaffolded Node.js app for Acme developers. So this way you can see that these changes will apply in the package JSON. My user is going to be guest. And let me just change this just to show you it actually working. So node 101 will be the namespace. We'll give it a more descriptive namespace. So you'll see this in OpenShift as a project. Okay, so I'm going to click review. Excuse me. You'll see in here that I've just got the 2 steps, project info to review. I've looked at these variables. I'm happy with each of these. I click create, and now my workflow is going to run. It's found the Git skeleton inside of GitHub, so it's fetched it. It's injected the variables in here, and then it's actually published a new version to GitHub, and it's registered in the catalog, right? A 3-second task. It's very quick typically to do this. So now, if I open up my new application inside of Developer Hub, you'll see that I've got all of these available links here. So you'll see, because I created 2 links, one was for dev spaces, one was for Git deb, I've got 2 links that will open up in both of these. The tech docs are available in here, as well as the ability to view the source. Okay, so as a starting point now, as a developer, I have my reference points here. So every time I need to go to my application, I can go to this item in here, and I'll have everything ready and available for me. So the first thing is, let's actually open up the source code itself, and you'll see here that this is the actual rendered version of the application that we just built, because you can see it just happened a minute ago. It's pushed it to the actual Git repo name that I've given it, and it's got all of these pre-built items in here. So I think the first thing we need to verify is, did it actually render all the variables correctly? So we'll start off at package.json, and we'll see here that the actual name itself was built, as well as the description. You'll remember that I changed it to Acme developers. Okay, so this one here, I believe, was just based off of the repo name, but it has definitely injected it in there. If I look at my dev file, you'll see the same thing has happened, right? So all those placeholder items that I had in my template have now been built out, which is great. And then most importantly, I think in my Kubernetes, my namespace, node 101, right? So my namespace was also added in here as well, node 101 and the repo name. Okay, so the most important thing is that all of these things have actually happened, as well as in here. In my Git workflow, let's make sure that we've actually built everything in here. So the same thing has happened in here. We've kept our values in here correct. And you'll see in here also that we've also kept our string literal for the Git images that we also need to create in here. Had I decided to use values.params in here, this would have actually pushed out the actual credentials, and I don't want the users to see that. So it looks like everything had built correctly. Now you're seeing in here, there's actually a failure. Now this is actually a deliberate failure, and I want to show this to you. Right in my Git action, you'll see that it actually failed, and it's going to fail if I've done this correctly. It's going to have failed with this this value here. Registry must be provided. Now the reason for this is that in my actual Git code, okay, you notice that I had, sorry, wrong place here. You'll notice that I had a build and deploy, and you'll notice that I had 3 values here that I actually had not filled out. Okay, so this is this was definitely the reason why that did not actually push through. So I need to actually fill these out. Okay, so in order to do that, I have actually stored, let me try and open this up in my WIP files. I have actually got the variables in here that I need to add as secrets inside of GitHub. So let's go ahead and do this right now. So under my V101 project, I'm going to go to settings, and I'm going to go to secrets and variables, and I'm going to go to actions. Now, there are 3 different areas that you can push secrets and variables. Environment variables, which would work across your entire repo. Then you have repository secrets. Repository secrets work on a repository level. And then you have organizational secrets, and these actually span even wider across an entire organization of Git repos. Depending on how your organization is structured, I would always recommend pushing certain things depending on the scope of where you need it. If it makes sense to put it on an organizational level, put it in there. For today, I won't be using that because organization secrets actually require a public repo. Because we're private, we're not pushing that in there. But I digress. That's a different part of GitHub. So let's go ahead and create these secrets that we've got here. So the first one is we need the OpenShift server. So I've got that server in here right now. I'm going to add that secret in there. We also want an OpenShift token. Okay, so typically these are credentials that we will add into to log into OpenShift. So to get the token, I just run out ocummi-t. Gives me this SHA file. I'm going to throw that in here. Okay, and then I think I had 3 others. So I had the actual image registry for Quay. Okay, so I'm actually using a local Quay instance. I'm not using Quay.io. I have it running in a container separately. And then I have this Quay user and password. Let me just talk about this quickly. So inside my local Quay, I created a bot, and I prefer putting bot credentials in rather than user credentials because the bot credentials are easier to manage. You can put a time span on it, or a life cycle on it, or a lifespan, whatever you want to call it, just a certain amount of time you want it to use it, and they're much easier to manage. So I've actually created one in here. Okay, so this is the actual credentials for it. I'm just going to throw this in very quickly. So I have to add a new secret for this, and I believe it's called image registry user. Okay, and I believe I called it okay, and then finally it also wants a token. So this needs to be regenerated. You only get to see this once, otherwise it disappears. Another reason why I like using bots. So I'll just be adding this token in as image registry password. So let's go back into here, set this one here, and we need to add one more, which was the password. I'll add the password first so I don't have to repaste. Sorry. What's going on here? My VS Code crashed. How nice. Believe it's just password. What happened to my VS Code? Here it is. Okay, so we're just going to open install.txt. Make sure I do have this correctly in here, and it is called image registry password. So we've actually pushed that through there. Sorry guys, I'm bouncing around all over the place here. Okay, so now we have these 3 secrets in here. So now we have built this, so the GitHub action should actually now, when we rerun this, this should work. But in order for the action to be re-triggered, we need to actually make a change to the actual code, because this is, I believe, in our actual code workflow, we have triggered this on check-in, is it? So it's on push, as you can see here. So on push is when we actually will trigger the GitHub change. So what I'm going to do here quickly, if I go back to my workflow, right? So we've done the create new application, we've pushed it to GitHub. So now we're actually going to do the code change and trigger the full Git action workflow, right? So at this point, I'm a developer. I'm going to actually make a physical change to the code. So that being said, I will go into my entry point in Develop Hub, and I'll say, okay, I want to edit the code. Now, they can obviously do a Git clone locally, and they can run this on their local laptop, and they can use their local tools. But we have, just going to sign in quickly. We do have VS Code available online, either through Dev Spaces, or you can use Git Dev. It's very cool, and you can see in here that my actual application has loaded up. So I'm just going to create a very, very quick change here. So I'm just going to change this greeting message altogether and say new application for Acme team. Okay, so my Node.js app is going to have a very quick change in here, and then I'm going to commit this, and I'm going to say added new greeting message. Okay, so right now I'm happy with this change. It's a very quick string change. Commit push. And you'll see here right now, if I go back into my actions, that we are now passing, because of the on push, we are now repassing through this. So if I've put the secrets in correctly, everything should run. So right now we're running the action, we're building the image. Okay. You'll see here that we have successfully built the image. We're now going to try and push it to Quay. Let's see if my credentials work. They did. We're installing the OC CLI, and these are all Git actions in here. So OC CLI is being downloaded. We're now logging into OpenShift, and we have a problem with the token. So that's interesting. Okay, so I might have actually got a wrong. Okay, so I actually wasn't logged in, so I apologize for that. Let's throw this back in. So I apologize for that. Let's get this variable re-added. So I'm back in my, I need to get to the right repo here. So I'm in .101. Let's go back to settings. And let's fix our token. Apologize, I wasn't logged in. I'm not sure what token that was giving me. So we have that in here. Okay, so now let's just make another change to our server. Let's add dot, dot, dot. Another change to the greeting message. So we're going to give it a descriptive message so Git Actions knows what it's actually pushing against. So we go back to our Git Actions. And once again, let's follow the Git workflow. Okay, so it's building the image. Pushing it to Quay. Installing OCCLI. We are now logging into OpenShift, and this time it did log in and it's created the namespace. We're applying these manifests, so everything that we've pushed together is now working. And you'll see here that we've actually created a link. So new application active team ... So you can see that we now have our application running inside of OpenShift. Now, just to prove that this is working, we're going to add, this is the second phase. We're going to just quickly add our Node.js application again. We're going to change it, added more greeting, right? Commit and push. So go back to our Git action. We know that this one was successful. So we have 2 failures, we have 1 happy. Now we've got added more greeting. And you'll see in here that we're running the build and deploy again. Going through the Git actions. And once again, we've created a new link. It seems like it's happy. I go in here and this is the second phase has come through. So going through our walkthrough here, you'll see that we've been able to build a new catalog. We've been able to build a new skeleton with placeholder variables. The catalog injects the parameters in there as defined by the developer. It's created a new app. We've pushed it into GitHub. We've done some code changes. Git Actions has picked up on those code changes, pushed it to Red Hat K, and then moved it directly into OpenShift. So yeah, so hopefully this was useful for you. Obviously as next steps, our CI/CD process here, right? So this area here was very simplified. I would recommend that you could actually do things like build based on tags. So you could do a developer tag, a QA tag, a pre-prod staging tag, and a production tag, and then you could actually use those to push to different containers and different deployment strategies inside of OpenShift. So we could actually do that as well. And then on top of this, multi-environment deployments are also something that you can manage inside of Developer Hub. So hopefully this was useful. Please feel free to reach out to me. My information will be in the details below, and have a good day.